graphing this absolute value equation, you should be able to look at it and tell that your vertex is at 1, 2. Notice that in vertex form, you have x minus h inside of the absolute value. So your h here is 1, your k is 2. So we have a vertex at 1, 2. Now we're going to put in some x values to the left of that, like 0 and negative 1. We'll also go to the right of that with 2 and 3. So let's replace x with those values and solve for the y, or simplify the right side. So in place of x, we're going to put negative 1. This time you're subtracting 1, and then you're adding 2. You're taking the absolute value and then adding 2. Negative 1 and minus 1 gives us negative 2. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 gives us 4. So we have a point at negative 1, 4. Now if you put 0 in, you'll have y equals absolute value of 0 minus 1 and then plus 2. 0 minus 1 gives us negative 1. Absolute value negative 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 gives us 3. So we have a point at 0, 3. Put 2 in. Replace x with 2. We'll have 2 minus 1 inside of absolute value, and then plus 2. 2 minus 1 gives us 1. Absolute value of 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 gives us 3. So we have a point at 2, 3, and then we'll put in 3. So y equals absolute value of 3 minus 1 and then plus 2 out to the side. 3 minus 1 gives us 2. Absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 gives us 4. So when we put in 3, we get 4 out. So we have a point at 3, 4, and you should be able to see that V forming. Absolute value is always a V shape. Sometimes it may open up, sometimes open down, but it's always that V shape. Again, we can look at the vertex form for this. There's no other number inside of the absolute value, so the h here is 0, and then the number out to the right is negative 3, so your k is negative 3. So you have a vertex at 0, negative 3. Now we're going to put in some x values to the left of 0, like negative 1 and negative 2, and then we'll go to the right of 0 with 1 and 2. Substitute in. This time you're taking the absolute value, then you're multiplying by 2, and then subtracting 3. Absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Now that number in front means multiplication, so now we have 2 times 2, that's 4, and 4 minus 3 gives us 1. So we have a point at negative 2, 1. Then we can put negative 1 in. Absolute value of negative 1 is positive 1. 2 times 1 is 2. And then 2 minus 3 gives us negative 1. So we have a point at negative 1, negative 1. Next one, put 1 in. Absolute value of 1 is 1. 2 times 1 gives us 2, and 2 minus 3 gives us negative 1. So we have a point at 1, negative 1. Now let's put 2 in. Absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 times 2 gives us 4, and then 4 minus 3 gives us 1. So we have a point at 2, 1. Connect those, and you've got your absolute value graphs. Number 6, if we think about HK form or vertex form for an absolute value graph, the H is 0 and the K is 2. To the left of 0 we can go with negative 1 and negative 2. To the right of 0 let's go with 1 and 2. So substituting in your negative 2, I'm going to replace x with negative 2. This time we're taking the absolute value and then adding 2. Oops, if you're working on the worksheet that I gave you, this is actually number 7, my fault. Absolute value of negative 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 gives us 4. So we have a point at negative 2, 4. If we put negative 1 in, absolute value of negative 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 gives us 3. Putting in 1, absolute value of 1 is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. So we have a point at 1, 3. And now put 2 in. Absolute value of 2 is 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. Connect those, you'll have your absolute value graphs. And we can put arrows on the end just showing they continue on forever in those directions. Hopefully by this point you can figure out that the vertex is 0, 0. Your H and K are both 0. So we got a vertex at 0, 0. Now to the left of 0 we can put in negative 1. And I'm going to go ahead and put in negative 3. The reason I'm choosing multiples of 3 with the negative 3, and then on the right side we'll put in 1 and 3. Both the negative 3 and the 3 are multiples of 3, so we can get a integer coordinate, integer y value out of this. So we'll see how that works. We have negative 1/3 and then times the absolute value of, in place of x we can put negative 3. Absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. Negative 1/3 times 3. If you're doing this without a calculator, you'll want to think of the 3 as 3 over 1. And then when you multiply, you get negative 3 over 3, which is negative 1. So we have a point at negative 3, negative 1. Now let's put in negative 1. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Then multiply negative 1/3 times 1 and we get negative 1/3. So plotting a point negative 1 and then negative 1/3 is just it's between the negative, it's between 0 and the negative 1 on your y values. If we put in 1, we'll have the same result. Absolute value of 1 is also 1. 1 times negative 1/3 is negative 1/3. So we have 1 negative 1/3. And then let's put 3 in. Absolute value of 3 is 3. And then negative 1/3 times 3 gives us negative 1. Connect those, you'll have your absolute value graphs. Notice that this V opens down. The reason for that is because A is negative.